Welcome back to the channel. My name is Chiso, your coding companion, and today we'll be diving into the wonderful world of CSS. Our topic for today is CSS Box Model. Now, you might be wondering what the hell is CSS Box Model? Well, there are a few things I need to say before we get started, and that's I want you to have this mental model, and that's every single thing in CSS is a box. Every single element you're going to be standing in your page, consider it a box. Now, with that out of the way, let's look at what we have at our code base. Now, I have a pretty basic setup. I scaffolded a project using Vite with vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, TypeScript actually. TypeScript. I utilize TypeScript, but it doesn't really matter. We're not going to be touching the JavaScript, the functionality or interactivity of the page. We're not touching the JavaScript part of things. We're just going to be focusing on the CSS. And I just have something pretty basic in my HTML file. You see that I have my regular stuff with, and then in my body tag, I just have my two paragraphs, the first paragraph and second paragraph. Give them class names of first and second. And then in my styles, I give just little basic styling so we can actually have something displayed on the screen. Where I don't know if many of you might know about this star selector. This is a wildcard character. Now, what this does is that it's basically targeting every single element on my page. So I first started with nuking all the margins and padding on the page. For the beginners watching this video, in case you are not familiar with the term margin or padding, now these are different types of spacing that an element can have. By default, then you see if I deactivate this, by default, the browser user agent styles gives elements a default padding and a default margin. In the body, I just set the font family to monospace and the font size before so that it could be a bit big for us to see. And then I just give the paragraphs background colors so that we would visually see what's actually happening. Now, we said the topic for today is box model. Now, what is this box model? Now, box model is a concept in CSS in which the elements of your page are divided into different layers, different sections. And there are actually 4 different sections or 4 different boxes for every element on your page. There is the content box, there is the padding box, there is the border box, and then we have the margin. Would I call it the margin box? Yeah, margin box, yes. Yes. And each of these things decide how your element is going to be on your page. Now, let me explain what all these things mean. I'll start with the content box. As the name implies, content. It's the content box is where your actual content is. For example, if you go to my index HTML, you see that what is inside this paragraph element now is first. So it means the content box is what does this entire place surrounding this content here, which is first. Now, the next is the padding box. Now, what is padding? Padding is inner spacing. Now, the padding box, it defines the spacing within the element itself, meaning that's why I have my background color here. Let's just try it out. Now, let's say I give the first a padding of 10 pixels. Let's work with pixels now. For some reason, I want to use pixels. And you see that, you notice immediately that the space within, remember, this is the element, this is the p tag. The space within the p tag here that I targeted increased. So that's what your padding does. Your padding targets, like it specifies the inner spacing, like it spaces the inner spacing of the element. Now it comes before the border box. So it determines the space between the border, and that is the border box, and then the content. So that's what padding does. Let me just up this a little bit more, just exaggerate this quite a bit. You see that. So like I said, is within. Now the next thing I want to talk about is your border box. Now the border box just defines the border. You just define like the lines. You know what borders are? The lines that like surround the particular element I'm styling. So for example, in my second, I can decide to add a border of 2 pixels solid Rebecca purple. Now you will notice immediately, okay, not immediately, let's see which color would I pick now. Let's just say black then. I don't know, black should do. Okay, maybe 2 pixels is too small. 12 pixels, yeah. Okay, you notice immediately that we have this black border coming in. Now it's a form of a box. Like I said, just take everything as a box. And like I said, this border is after the padding. So the padding occurs between the border and the actual content itself. So if I come over here and I increase the padding of this guy, excuse me, padding of this guy to 3M, switch to M's. Now you see that the padding on this guy has increased. So the space between the border and the content is that's what the padding is. Then the last one I want to treat is the margin. Now, the margin is simply the space between an element and another element that is close to it. So, for instance, if I want to determine this the space, currently first and second are just together. But if I want to declare a space between first and second, so the margin is outside the border box, so it differentiates elements. So from here, I can now decide to say have a margin bottom. You can set margin all around, but let's just say margin bottom for this case of 2M. Now you see that the second is pushed 2M to the bottom. In case you don't know what M's are relative font unit. You can learn more about CSS units at your spare time. Oh well. Now let's actually visualize what's going on here using our dev tools before I continue with the last part of the video. Let's activate our dev tools. If in case you're not familiar with the dev tools, it's very simple to launch it, and it helps developers do a lot of things. So in case you want to launch your dev tools, it's as simple as pressing F12 on your keyboard, or you can decide to right click on an element and you see inspect. So in the context menu, when you right click, you see inspect and the dev tool is open. Now right away you see that when I hover over first, you see that first not only is first highlighted, like the first content highlighted, but also the margin is highlighted. So let's see if we can visualize this. So if you go to the computed, you see what I'm saying. So over here you see that we have margin, we have the border box, we have the padding box, and the actual content box. So you can actually visualize all this using your dev tools. And now there's no border currently here. That's because we did not set border in the first. But if we go to the second, we'll see that there's a border. Okay. Let's go back to the first. Now you see everything is here. The padding we specified, the content specified, and even because the margin, we didn't specify a margin left or a margin right or a margin top. The only thing we specified was a margin bottom. And the reason why the padding was repeated was that I used a shorthand. The shorthand padding property represents padding top, bottom, left, and right. The next thing I would like to talk about is box sizing, the CSS property box sizing. And the reason I want to talk about it is that it relates with the box model, CSS box model. The default box sizing value is content box, meaning now what does box sizing do? Box sizing determines like where the width and height, that is where the dimensions of a particular element are calculated. What parameters determine the particular dimensions of a particular element in your page. For instance, I said the default box sizing value is content box. So let's say I don't want this first to fill up the entire screen. Just very quickly, I want to give this first a width of 20 pixels, and I want it to have, oh, it's not entered that. Okay, let's say a width of 100 pixels. Then would that be okay? Dang it, 300 pixels. What might be magic number here? And I want a height of probably 150, maybe half of that, or 200 to avoid. Oh, so 150 would have sufficed. But anyhow, now I have explicitly defined my width and height on this particular element. And remember, I also set a padding of 50 pixels and a margin button of 200. Now, if I actually go to my DevTools now, and I inspect the elements, inspect, go to my DevTools, and I visualize it, you will notice something. You see that here, which is the content box, remember this content, this padding, this border, and this margin box. The content box, you see that the width and the height are here. As you see the dimensions here, 300 by 200, which correspond to what I specified here, 300 pixels by 200 pixels. So by default, the box size is content box, meaning that the width and the height is only determined by the content. You get? So the padding, border, and margin, they are not added to the calculation of the width. And that's why, so in these cases, if you specify width and height, the padding and borders and margin values that you add will just be added on top of it, and that will constitute the total size of that particular element. That's what we call it box sizing. But you can change this behavior. Now, there's one other particular value other than content box for the box sizing property, and that's box sizing border box. Now, what box sizing, or if you see straight away, the element was reduced. So let me just comment this out. Elements, and then element reduced. You see that? Now, what box sizing border box says is telling the browser now is that start this width and height I've defined. Yes, I defined my width as 300 pixels and my height as 200 pixels. This width and the height must include the border and the padding. So remember, after the content goes the padding box before the border box. So by specifying the box sizing as border box, I'm now explicitly telling my browser to ensure that whatever dimensions I'm giving for the width and the height, the padding and the border should be added to that calculation. So now you would see that, just look at the size of this guy. So even if I just come here and add this ridiculous border here, come over here and paste this here, you see that it doesn't change. Rather, it looks as if the content shrunk. That's because everything is being calculated and is being determined by the border, the padding, and the actual width of the content that I specified. And if I do the same thing here, so let's say if I do something here and I say this is 100 pixels, you see that it appears that the content was shifted down, right? That's because I have set my box size into border box. So the whole calculation now is handled differently. And if you go to your DevTools, you see what I mean. So you see now that even though I specified, remember we're in first, yeah. So even though I specified the width and height to be 300 by 200, you see that what you say is actually 70. That's because every single thing here, so from border, padding, and this, if you add all of them up, they actually add up to give you the specified width and height as the dimensions I specified. So that's it. So you have two properties for the box sizing, the border box and the content box. The default is content box. So let me just show you something very quickly. So if I actually change this content box, it goes back to the way it was before. Exactly. So that's it. And now usually, to avoid weird behaviors and to maintain more control, many developers usually add this particular thing to their resets, and that's box size. You see it in many code bases, where at the top of, with the start selector, remember this start selector selects all elements. They just come here and just say box size and border box. Now this box size and border box, like, it's just like a sensible default. You can, so that when you're declaring this specific width and height, you know that this element is sticking to this width and height. The pattern and the border, they're not like calculated aside. So you know that everything is just coming together for this particular dimension you are giving it. I always use this because, like, it's very, very helpful. At least I know what's actually happening on the page. I'm not allowing things run amok. And then one more thing, I didn't mention this, but you noticed it. Now remember, I said that margin means the space outside the actual content, the actual element, rather. So it is what determines, like, the spacing between different elements. So you notice that when I specify the box sizing as border box, margin was not included in the calculations. That's because when I specify it as border, let's go back to what we're using to visualize. Margin occurs outside of border. So everything, border, padding, content, everything is within. This is what determines the dimensions for a box sizing of border box. Margin is not included, and there's no box sizing of margin box. That's because margin is a special case. I just wanted to point that out in case anyone had questions or no one, you didn't pick it up. So just note it down. Yeah, that's just it. Yeah, and that's a wrap for today's coding session. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give a thumbs up, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to never miss out on our coding escapades. I would love to hear your opinions on this video. And if you have any video requests related to front-end technologies, please indicate those in the comment section, or you can reach out to me privately. I'm always happy to take in video requests. Until next time, happy coding and stay awesome.